Morning. Hi, Evan. It's me, Evan. I wanted to hop on really quickly, or try to hop on really quickly. Excuse me. As you can tell, I'm in bed. Woke up, went and brushed my teeth, and came back to lay down a little bit in the bed before I actually get up to start my day. I'm gonna go try and take a walk here. But I wanted to just. I know y'all are probably like, again. I want to talk about grief again, but I want to talk about processing my grief as a man versus processing grief as a woman, because I've realized that me personally, I don't know about anybody else. Maybe this will hold true for some trans men if they've experienced grief as both genders. When I processed grief as a woman, I realized that a lot of my grief processing was just crying and being consoled by other people and being told everything was going to be okay, don't worry. A lot of physical hugging and contact, and a lot of consoling that way, from being perspective from me as a woman, my perspective as a woman. That's how I remember. Anytime I was upset about anything, upset, crying, needed to cry, or any of that, that's how I remember it going. I specifically remember when I was about 8 or 9, my grandfather, my dad's father, passing away. My grandfather, I was very close with him. I won't get into the details. It was a good, awesome, healthy relationship. He understood that I didn't identify as a little girl. He just intrinsically knew that I identified as a boy, that I was like, I'm a boy, I don't understand why they treat me like a girl. And so he would do things with me, that he would bring me things. Like, I was very into taking things apart and putting them back together and knowing how mechanically things worked. And so he would bring me things that allowed me to do those things. He would bring me motors and other little intricate things that were mechanically inclined, because he was like, here's how they work, let me show you, let's take them apart together and I'll show you how they work. So when my grandfather passed away and I was 8 or 9, I remember being very upset. I remember like flashes of memory of that time. I remember my dad coming to my house unexpectedly, because my parents were divorced, and my dad showed up to tell my mom my grandfather passed away. And when they told me about it, I remember I like literally fainted. I like got weak in the knees and fell to the ground, because my grandfather passed away, and like I said, I was close with him, and it was very shocking to me. And I just cried and cried and cried, like I was almost unconsolable, because I remember at the funeral services, um, they had to take me and move me to the back of the church, and someone sat with me at the back pews because they couldn't hear the priest giving giving the sermon of, telling about my grandfather's life and everything. Like, they couldn't hear him over my grandmother and I crying. I was crying so loud, and my grandmother was crying, obviously, because her husband passed. But like, they had to move me to the back of the church. And then after the church services, when we went back to my grandmother's house, they consoled me again by putting me in a spare bedroom and having me take a nap. And someone sat there with me for a while. I think it might have been my dad. I think my dad sat there with me for a while until I fell asleep. Um, I just remember any time as a girl and being really upset about anything. And this may not just, what I'm talking about may not apply only to being in a grief process or grieving someone. That may just be whenever you're upset and crying. But I just remember being and when I was a girl growing up, and I cried or got upset about anything, it was immediately a constant. People would console me. People would hug me, ask me what was wrong, bring me water. Want to know what was going on. Um, so never experienced what that was like from a boy's male perspective, because, like I said, I was born a female, and then didn't transition until I was 37. Um, so that losing my grandfather, that's my first vivid, visceral memory of losing someone that I was close with and being very upset by it. Later on, my grandma passed, the woman that was married to my grandfather. And then my other grandparents my mother's parents have both passed away and moved on to their places. Um, so I lost all of those people that were close to me. That was 4 people, my grandparents. while I was a girl, while I was a woman. So I understand that aspect of grieving as a woman. Then I transitioned when I was 37, like I said, and that was, I believe, in 2010. And yes, 2010. 2018, 8 years later, 8 years into my transition, 8 years into me being me as Evan, my dad passes away. And I'm like, what the fuck? I don't know what to do with myself. Like, I was crying, but I wasn't crying. I was trying to cry. Nothing was coming out of my body as tears. Then I would stop trying to cry, and then the tears would flow, and I just wasn't really understanding anything. Very confused. Plus, there was a lot of complications with my dad's estate, legal wise, that I'm still to this day trying to figure out. And I want to get into it. That so the grieving process about my dad kind of was put on hold due to the fact that we had to pay attention to other legalities regarding his passing. So when I finally found a place for myself where I thought, okay, I can actually kind of try to grieve, it was almost a year and a half later, and then I met Brandina, and she understood, hey, you're still grieving your dad. And I was like, I am. And she's like, yeah, you never really got a chance to grieve him, so that's okay. I will be there for you when you have those moments. And I was like, oh man, this woman's amazing. And so then I had my time with B, which was only about 6 months, and then she passed away. And I'm really struggling with the grieving process. I have a very hard time understanding how to move those emotions through my body. Apparently, from what I've been told from all my other male friends and some doctors and therapists and psychologists, is that, and from a moment in time when I remember having a weird discussion with my dad about how men express their emotions. And men apparently do it through action, which would explain why when men get mad, they're like, I'm gonna punch you. Or they want to go do something constructive, like build something or destroy something or just do something in the physical, something tangible, something they can touch and take apart, put whatever. Because when I have my moments of grief, and I still have them, it's gonna be 3 years in May of B's passing, in 5 years this last March, the end of March, of my dad's passing. And I'm still apparently grieving these two people. They were very close to me. They were the two people that I knew in my life that really saw Evan, not this, but me. They were my people. My dad was my person. My dad was the person I went to when I had issues and needed to figure things out for myself. My dad allowed me the space to go and talk it out. I would talk it out with him, but in really honesty, he would just sit there and listen, and I basically was kind of talking it out to myself. He's not around anymore. I didn't have that person around anymore. After my dad died to do that with. B entered the picture, and I thought, man, well, maybe she's going to kind of take his place in a sense for those aspects. And she did. It was the interesting thing. It's like she was very much in the same vibrational thing as my dad. And there were aspects of her personality that kind of reminded me of my dad a little bit. Like, she had a way of listening when I had problems. She wanted to hear what they were. She would give suggestions or input, but it was more from a standpoint of like, well, there's always this. It wasn't like, you should do this or you could try this. It was like, oh, did you know this is available to you? Just in case you were wondering, this is available to you. And I'd be like, what? I didn't know that was an option. She'd be like, yeah, you should look into it. Or you can't, or if you want to look into it, there you know, now you know. She was like my dad. She never was like, you need to do this, or you should do this, or you could go do this, or maybe this is going to solve this. They both would let me figure it out on my own. Now those two people aren't physically available to me. And I'm upset. Anger is a part of the grief stage of grief. And I've been working with spiritual people. My dad passing kind of opened me up to some things spiritually, not religious, spiritually. I started meditating a heck of a lot more when my dad passed away. And then Brandina's passing opened me up even more because lo and behold, not only was she my girlfriend, she was also my twin flame. And that's it. I guess I should do a whole video about that and what that means. A lot of people have overindulged themselves and romanticized the crap out of what the twin flame dynamic actually is. And I feel there's a lot of misinformation around in the world about it right now. Because apparently now everyone's claiming they have a twin flame, and not everyone has a twin flame. Anyways, I don't want to get off the topic. I'm in this phase of grieving where I'm having bouts of anger again, and apparently the only way for me to relieve myself of this feeling is to be physical in some sense. And that, for me, I guess means I go take a walk, I process my feelings, and I come back. Because when I go on my walks, sometimes I just start crying. Tears will just start rolling down my face. And I guess I feel better afterwards, but I still miss that lady. I've been asked to let go of her physicality because the universe is ready to send me someone. But I don't know, it's weird. I don't know if I want that. I do, but I don't. I feel at this point I'd be comparing whoever it is to her to be, and I don't want to compare. It's not fair to anybody to be comparative, especially when it involves a person. No one's gonna be B. Brandina passed away. I want to bust out into tears. I want to know a question. I want to know a question. I want to know the answer to something, and I don't know if I'm ever going to get it. Bernardina was the first good relationship I had with anybody I dated. Meaning she was the first healthy, viable, reciprocal relationship I've ever had with anybody. She showed me massive amounts of unconditional love. There were many things that we both did that would have probably brought an end to the relationship had we been involved with another person. Or would have been things that were annoyances or little quirky things. But with her, I didn't care. They weren't annoyances, they weren't quirks, they were just part of her personality. And it didn't make me look at her any differently or think of her in any different manner. She was my love. She was my queen. She was my woman. Apparently in the spiritual realm, she and I are married. We're husband and wife and wife, husband and husband, whatever. I don't know how you look at it. It's energy. It's not gendered. We're very much connected. I miss her. I know she's here. I know she's energetically here. But I've realized there's a part of me, and I can't figure out which part of me it is. I don't know whether it's my ego, my inner child, the little version of me, the child version of of Evan. If I let her go completely, then for some reason in my crazy ego mind, it tells me that she's completely gone and I have no access to her at all. Not even energetically, which I know is bullshit. I was told this the other day. by the universe when I was trying to meditate and asking questions, and I guess they were dumping me with the download. And I was asking a question, and they kept asking me questions. I'm like, why are you answering my questions with questions? And they basically were like, we're going to answer your questions with questions, because the answers you answer our questions with are going to lead you to the direction you want to go and on the path you want to be. Makes sense. It doesn't make it any less frustrating at times. Human experience is very tricky and interesting and beautiful and messy and amazing all at once. It's like that movie, Everything All at Once. Did you know that everything actually does happen all at once? That time is not linear. Time is a man-made fabrication, and that actually the past, present, and future are all happening at the same exact point in time. It's just different dimensional frequencies. Can you believe that? I do. Considering some of the things I've experienced in life, it totally makes sense to me. It's called quantum physics, I guess. That's what they call it, but whatever. It's fucking energy. Unfortunately, in this place, this rock place, this 3D place, this earth place, we have to find measurements. We have to find ways of measurements in order to show our own selves our graduation of advancement or enlightenment or ascension to become enlightened, higher vibrational beings where we have no standpoint of judgment towards or for or about people, places, or things or experiences. Because I've been told that when you stand in a place of neutrality, you're able to make a conscious decision and make the best conscious decision for yourself. And I'm trying to find a place of neutrality in the middle of my grief about this situation, because in my mind, the universe conspired with my late father to bring me that woman, but then they also were like, oh yeah, but just so you know, we're gonna actually remove her from your life in the physical sense because you asked to have that experience with her. You conspired with yourself before you became a human being, and this was part of the experience you signed up for, because there's a huge blessing in this experience. And right now, I'm trying to find the blessing. But at the moment, I'm being confronted with my anger and irritation and frustration with the fact that I know I asked to experience her and in the way I experienced her, because I knew that there would be something good on the other side. Grief is a butthead, y'all. Grief does kind of what it wants when it wants to do it. And now that I'm going to grief therapy. She's using a technique for PTSD patients. Apparently I suffer from PTSD because of my personal experiences that I had in life growing up and getting kicked out of the military and being a transgendered individual. And my grief therapist, who's awesome, she says the grief therapy is working because I am revisiting things that I thought I had gotten rid of or had figured out for myself. And they're coming back around and going, you need to take a look at these things again. And so the grief and anger for me are tied inextricably together, and I'm having to untie them. But figuring that out as a man, how to process my grief, has been a very interesting and challenging thing to do, because of the men in my life, they do not talk about their feelings. They don't. They're very kind and they say they are caring, and I'm sure they are on some level very caring individuals. But men my age don't speak about how they feel, and it's so fucking frustrating. Because the minute I open my mouth to these individuals, I'm probably perceived as weak and less of a man, and I don't really care. I mean, that stings a little, but in the grand scheme of it all, I don't really give a fuck because they don't really have an indirect impact on my life. They're not paying my bills. They're not living me. I'm living me. But it's just frustrating because I don't know how to process my grief as a man. It's a new concept. It's new actions I have to take to subside the feelings I have sometimes, to console myself, to comfort myself. Never really had to do that before because, like I said, as a girl, whenever I was upset, people were like, "Oh, what's wrong?" And they were hugging and like, "Oh, I'll console you," and like, "Oh, it's so sad." Okay. As a dude, they're just like, "Oh, you bumped yourself. Get up and keep going." It's almost as if society thinks men don't have feelings, which is so not true. Anywho, I have things to do. I'm gonna go take my walk. The sun has come out. It was cloudy earlier. The sun looks like it's gonna peep itself open or out of the clouds. Let's look. Let's take a look. Looks sunshiny to me. So that's what I'm gonna do. We'll take a walk. Alright guys, thank you for listening to me. I hope your day goes swell. And if you're in a process of grieving, you're not alone. It will get better. It's so cliche, time does heal. And allow yourself to be mad, angry, upset, sad, whatever you're feeling, allow that for yourself. Just try not to sit in it. Okay? If you gotta get up like me and go take a walk, do that. It'll help. Okay, guys? I'm gonna go brush my hair and try to make it look somewhat presentable. Probably just put a hat on and then go take a walk. Take my comb. Alright. You guys have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. Bye.